Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Tonight we will be playing the horror game called Mycorrhiza, the third part. Now this is going to be the final part. Now let's continue. Now let's finish this game once and for all. Trapped. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be safe. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. There were people laughing and distorted faces, and I couldn't remember, but it must have been terrifying. The pulsing pain in my head slowly subsided. I took deep breaths and kept mumbling to myself that it had all been a dream, nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. But what I saw when I opened the bedroom door was not what I had expected. Instead of the living room I had entered the building through, I found myself in the middle of a long hallway. A row of doors, interspread with handrails, covered each wall. I could hear people chatting in the distance. Where was I? And how did I get here? This place looked like a hotel at first glance. A plate with a room number was hanging next to all the doors. Mine was 215. As I moved towards the end of the hallway, I took a more thorough look at my surroundings. The floor was lined with a red carpet featuring an elaborate design. The red and white walls complemented the elegant atmosphere. On the ceiling hung electrical lamps that were similar in design to candles. As I stepped out of the hallway, I was momentarily blinded by the bright ambience. A huge chandelier was hanging on the ceiling of the grand hall I had stepped into. I seemed to be on the upper floor of this two-floor structure. The ground floor, apparently a restaurant area, was lined with tables. Multiple people were dining and happily chatting with each other. A huge window across from me showed a big body of water. Was I in a hotel by the beach? The water looked oddly close. We might be on a cruise. I needed answers. Quickly, I located the stairs and hurried down towards the restaurant. Luckily, one of the waiters was just passing by as I reached the bottom. "Excuse me, could you tell me where I am?" He answered without hesitation. "You're in the restaurant area, sir. If you'd like to order something, you need to..." No, I mean this whole hotel." This time, he did hesitate. "Well, you're on the Mycorrhiza cruise ship." I knew it. "If that's what you mean, is everything in order?" Hey, we were transported into a pretty fancy place. Cruise ship? How did I get on a cruise ship? Had I been kidnapped? Would my kidnappers let me walk around freely? The waiter had a concerned look on his face. He glanced over at his colleague, who had gestured to him with a stern expression on her face. "I could call someone over to help you. Or you could find someone at the help desk, just at the end of that hallway." He gestured back up the stairs and pointed at another hallway next to the one I had come out of. "Thank you. I'll just ask for more information at the help desk." I didn't want to hold him up any longer. Now, surprisingly, I think this is the most normal person we've encountered throughout this entire story. The waiter's colleague had by now crossed her arms in front of her chest and was tapping her foot impatiently. The waiter hesitantly nodded and turned away from me. A cruise ship. I didn't remember ever booking a ticket for a cruise. But as I rummaged through my pockets, I did find a key card with the number 215 on it. Right, the help desk. I should be able to find out more there. I made my way back up the stairs. The room at the end of the second hallway looked like a lounge area. It was filled with comfortable sofas and armchairs. Multiple groups of people were chatting to each other. I could see children playing near what I assumed to be the help desk. I quickly approached the man standing at the desk who perked up from the documents he was browsing. Hi, how can I help you? I'm a bit lost. Well, I don't really remember booking a cruise. Is there a way to get off early? He looked at me with a similarly puzzled expression as the waiter. Could you tell me your room number? Yes, it's 215, but I don't really remember booking it. I took out my key card and showed it to him. The man opened a drawer and started expertly flipping through the folders. Shortly after, he pulled out a document. Is this your name and signature? He turned it so that I could see it. To my surprise, the name and the signature written on it were indeed mine. But how? How could I forget signing up for a cruise? As for your second question, we're currently on the last day of our trip. The ship will arrive in the Kenjimitha port tomorrow at noon. Are you here with anyone? He threw a skeptical look my way. I must have sounded like a weirdo. No, I'm alone. I'll just sort things out tomorrow then. The employee shrugged and put the folder back into the drawer. Don't hesitate to let me know if you need any help. I turned around, wondering what my next course of action should be when... Ow! Something had hit me on my legs hard. I stumbled, but managed to stop my fall by holding onto the help desk. Oh God, are you okay? Lenny, you need to pay more attention. I looked up to see what had hit me. Initially, I had assumed that I had walked into some piece of furniture, but that wasn't the case. A boy was sitting on the ground in front of me. Someone was standing over him, making sure that he was alright. As soon as he had confirmed that he wasn't hurt, she turned to me. I'm very sorry about that. Are you hurt anywhere? Lenny, make sure to apologize. Sorry, I wasn't looking. No, it's alright. I'm okay. I turned to the boy named Lenny. Are you okay? Yeah, it's nothing. His look was fixed to the ground. It seemed like he really did feel bad about bumping into me. The woman had in the meanwhile fixed her gaze onto my face. Are you sure you're alright? You look rather pale. No, I'm fine. That didn't seem to convince her. My confusion and frustration about being on this boat had shown on my face. Would you like to sit down with us for a bit? I have some medicine against seasickness. It might help. Now that she was mentioning it, I was feeling a bit woozy. I had been too preoccupied with figuring out what was going on to notice. She led me to one of the sofas and motioned me to sit down. My name is Sabrina, by the way. This boy here is Lenny, and the girl over there is Amy. She motioned to a girl sitting at a table nearby who was brooding over a piece of paper. My name is Scott. So, are they your family? Sabrina stopped rummaging through her handbag and looked at me with an amused smile on her face. Oh no, they are my neighbor's kids. We're good friends and I paint with their children sometimes. I'm currently looking after them. While Sabrina was still looking for the medicine, Lanny approached his sister and peered over her shoulder. He then grimaced and walked over to our sofa to take a seat next to Sabrina. Here you go. She handed me a pill from a small bottle. Out of the corner of my eyes, I saw Lanny motion to Amy. I don't get how she can be so into drawing. It's boring. She's been at it for at least half an hour, and it still looks terrible. Oh, it takes time. Hey, I heard that. Amy shot an angry gaze at Lanny. Good art needs time. Exactly. Maybe you should work on some art as well. Yeah, maybe it'd help with your hyperactivity. I'm not hyperactive, I'm just healthy. That's what Dad says. I guess so. If I had any ounce of knowledge about music, I could help you relieve your energy that way at least. Though it's also been a while since my art. Sabrina trailed off with a sad look on her face. Don't worry, it's okay. I've been figuring out things on my own. Also, I've been asking Dad and Mom if they can buy me a melodica. I'm pretty sure I'll get one soon. Do you really seem to have a knack for art and music? Your parents must be proud of you. I don't know about Amy, but I'm pretty sure that they're proud of me. Amy shot another angry glance at Lanny's way, but didn't retort. She seemed to be the mature one in their sibling relationship. Hey, do you have any more of those pills? Dad. I jumped slightly. A voice had called out from right behind me. As I turned around, I saw a grumpy looking man. Sabrina grabbed her handbag once again. Another one, Frederick? It says on the package that one should be enough. Apparently not. Can't work while feeling like crap. Why did I agree to go on this trip? Sabrina gave him a skeptical look, but handed him a pill without saying anything. Frederick turned around on the spot and trotted off Sabrina's side. Sorry about that. He's usually more pleasant. The seasickness must be getting to him. That, coupled with an upcoming deadline for an article. So he's a journalist. No, that's not what I meant. He's a biologist, and he's been working hard on getting something published in that one magazine. If you ask me, his obsession with getting more publications is a bit unhealthy. A fellow scientist, now that I thought about it. I hadn't written anything in a while myself. Way more pressing matters had taken up my time recently. The spores were still. I jolted up. Sabrina looked at me in surprise. Thank you for the medicine. I feel better now. I should get going though. I was too anxious to sit still, even though I knew that there was nothing I could do until the ship came into the port next day. Alright, take care. Feel free to let me know if you need any more medicine. I thanked her again, saying goodbye to the siblings, and headed back towards the sleeping quarters. But I stopped just before the hallway that led to my room. My eyes wandered towards the big window. The sun had started to set, but I didn't feel tired at all. Likely because I had woken up just recently. And so I decided the best way to dispel some of my anxiety was to take in some fresh air. I continued on past the hallway and out into the deck. The salty breeze hit my face. I could hear the soft splashing of waves against the hull of the ship. This place was way emptier than I had expected. Less than a handful of couples and some families were standing near the edge of the railing. One of those couples had their dog with them. Every now and then, when it heard the call of a seagull, it jerked its head around. Were one of the pairs of this text perhaps Amy's and Lainey's parents? Absent-mindedly, I approached the railing right by the door and looked over. We were very high up. Looking down at the waves hitting the ship hull had an eerily hypnotic effect. Combined with the cool air and the sound of water, it calmed me down. Hey, I jerked up. Someone was standing at the railing right next to me. Sorry, I didn't mean to surprise you. No worries, it's okay. It looked like she had been standing there for a while. Did I somehow overlook her? I looked a bit confused, so I wanted to ask if you're alright. Oh well, I guess I'm a bit lost. I had a feeling she'd been no more understanding than the employees, so I decided not to tell her too much. I'm a bit lost too. It might sound weird, but I'm not sure how I ended up here. Oh? Wait, that sounded oddly familiar to my situation, but she seemed to misinterpret my surprised look. You know, it sounds odd. It's just like in dreams. Whenever you try to remember how you got to the place you're dreaming about, you can't. So I wasn't the only one. There was someone else here who was experiencing the same thing I was. Knowing this lifted my spirits. Just as I was about to tell her about my situation, she suddenly perked up. Sorry, I should go. I promised to meet someone. And with that, she hurried off before I could say anything. I was slightly frustrated by the fact that I hadn't been able to confide in her. But I could seek her out tomorrow, I guess. The sun had meanwhile almost set. A blood red stripe was visible on the horizon. I set off back towards my room. With nothing better to do, I got into bed and tried to sleep. My night was restless. Half of the time I wasn't sure if I was awake or asleep. Weird sounds kept waking me up. By the time the sun had risen, it felt like I had barely slept at all. Today would be the day we'd arrive at a place called Kejimite. From there, I would be able to get back home one way or the other. I rubbed my eyes as I opened the door that led out in the hallway, but something was wrong. The hallway looked different. Was it shorter? There definitely used to be more doors here. It was as if a new wall and door had appeared where the hallway originally continued to the restaurant area. I approached the new door and tried to turn the doorknob, but it was locked. Slowly panic set in. Was I trapped in here? Did everyone already leave? There was no way they had left me behind, right? I quickly approached one of the doors in the hallway and knocked. Silence. I tried the next, and then the third. All was silent. My heart rate accelerated. I forced myself to calm down and think this through. There was no way they would leave a passenger behind. And even if they did, they would notice sooner or later that I was still in here. The most productive thing to do right now would be checking if the other rooms were open. Maybe I could find a way to make people aware of the fact that I was still in here. I considered which door to try first. Which room should I go into? Okay, let's save. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Let's start with the top. The room was unfurnished and windowless. A sole light bulb in the middle of the ceiling illuminated it faintly. I could see about 15 people sitting on a dirty ground. 15 people? Most of them seemed to be adults, so there's still people here? But there were a couple of children cowering next to what I assumed to be their parents. One person from the group, an older man, raised his head as if walking from a dream. As if waking from a dream, I mean. The door, it's open. More and more people lifted their heads, and I could feel the stares piercing me. The man was the first to stand up and shuffle towards the door. I stepped aside, but as he tried to cross the threshold, he suddenly stopped. He was frozen in midair. His fingers tightened as if he was exerting great effort. Disappointed, he stepped back. It's no use. He sulked back to his spot and slumped to the floor. What? The other people in the room lowered their heads, their hopes dashed in an instant. I wasn't sure what was going on, but it was evident that they were in trouble. I quickly walked up to the older man. Hey, do you know what's going on here? No. We all woke up in this room and are unable to leave. And now it seems like you're stuck here with us as well. My heart stopped for a second and panic slowly started to set in. Was I really trapped in here? I hastily walked to the door and stepped right through. The man stared at me with wide eyes. This means that you, instead of the girl, might be able to help us. Right after he uttered those words, some of the people in the room lifted their heads and looked at me. Some with a look of disbelief, and some with hope in their eyes. So there was someone else on this ship who could enter and exit this room freely. What did she look like? He started explaining. I soon realized that this description fit someone I knew. It sounded just like the girl I had met on the deck yesterday. So she got into this mess as well. We asked her to help us, but she just laughed and left. Oh, so she's bad. That wasn't quite how I remembered her, but I wasn't like I'd known her for a long time. Was her nice appearance just an act? I shifted my attention back to the man before me. There might be people behind the other doors that we could possibly help. Please, let me know if you have anything that you don't need, or if you are in need of something. That way I can make sure that everyone gets out of here safely. Some people nodded in agreement, while the majority stayed stoic. A woman stood up, got something from a shelf, and approached me. We found some medicine in this room. We can't give away all of it, but maybe it will help someone. The label was barely legible. I could make out the letters Fun Ite. I still gladly took the bottle and thanked her as she trotted back. Please, if you find any food, bring it to us. Alright, I should head out, but I'll let you know if I find anything. With these words, I stepped back to the door. It closed behind me as if a wind gust had suddenly blown through the hallway. Which room should I go into? So maybe we could actually check each room. Now two. Door creaked open and light spilled into the damp room. A crowd of about 40 people occupied the space. Some were sitting on the floor and some were leaning against the dirty walls. Suddenly, someone near the door darted up and shoved me aside. It was Frederick, who I had met only briefly while I was chatting with Sabrina. He tried to force himself through the door, but stopped midair. An invisible force was pushing him back. Oh, he's mad. Some more people approached the door and tried the same, but to no avail. Damn it! Frederick slammed his fist into the wall. I thought this was my chance. Frustrated, he went back to where he was originally sitting. Since I had been in a room like this before, I knew that I was able to travel back and forth. Hey, a few of the people looked up as I started speaking. I should be able to walk in and out. There are also survivors in the other rooms. I might be able to get you some things if you need anything specific. Frederick shot up and walked up to me until he was way too close for comfort. We need food. You'll get some for us, right? It sounded more like a threat than a request. Yeah, I can do if I find some. I stepped back so I didn't have to smell his sour sweat anymore. Do you happen to have anything here that you don't need? Just in case other people trapped on the ship need anything specific. He looked at me as if I had just made a joke. What? No. Even if we had anything, we wouldn't just be giving it away. I looked at him skeptically. Alright. Know what you want. I have a gun with me. If you bring me food, I'll trade it for the gun. Oh, a gun. I had never used a firearm before, and I wasn't sure how a gun would help me in this situation. Hesitantly, I agreed to escape Frederick's impatient gaze. Maybe it would come in handy after all. But you'll have to make sure that to share the food with the others. Alright, whatever. Just give us something, alright? I don't have something with me right now, sorry. Then get the hell out of here and find something. He shouted at me and shoved me out of the room. I tripped and fell to the floor as he slammed the door shut in front of my face. That guy was a huge jackass. But I still felt bad for the other people in the room. I'd have to go back there eventually if I wanted to help them. And the gun. I dusted myself off and turned towards the other doors. Okay, now room 3. I entered the dimly lit room. It was desolate except for a few cans of food and a few water bottles in one of the corners. Oh. There was also 2 rather young children, 1 boy and 1 girl in the middle of the room. As I saw the girl kneeling over the boy's motionless body, my heart dropped. It was Amy and Lanny. No! Not the kids again! She looked at me with pleading eyes as I rushed to their side. Lanny was covered in sweat, indicating a heavy fever. His limbs were heavily bruised and he was heaving. I glanced over at Amy. Fortunately, she seemed to be alright. I'm Scott. We met yesterday. You're Amy, right? Yeah. Her voice was shaking. Lanny is so sick. Don't worry, Amy. We'll find a way to help him. She hesitantly nodded. That seemed to calm her down a bit. I had some medicine on me, or at least that's what the woman who gave it to me called it. I couldn't really read the label. Should I give it to Lanny? I'm pretty sure this is not good medicine, but might as well give it to the kid, right? This is a bad idea. It seemed like he would die if nothing was done. I decided to take the risk and administer the medicine to him. I have some medicine with me. He should be alright in no time if he takes this. Right. I had sounded more confident than I actually was in the hopes of cheering Amy up. I made sure that he was conscious enough to drink it. Then I carefully lifted his head and put the bottle to his mouth. He slowly gulped it down, and I set his head back down. Will he be okay now? I hope, Amy. I don't even know what I fed him. I think so, but it will take time for the medicine to take effect. All that was left to do was hope that what I gave him would help against his fever. You seem to have some food and water here. Do you think I could take some of it with me? More people are trapped in here, and they don't seem to have any of it. I don't mind. Thank you. She didn't seem very talkative, but that was to be expected, considering how concerned about her brother she must be. I will let you know once I find something that can help you, okay? Okay. She turned back towards her brother. I walked by the canned food and considered taking some with me. Take none, take half, take all of it. No way. This has to be like the worst ending we could give him. Taking all of it. We'll take. Oh, but we need the gun, right? We'll take half. I decided to take part of it with me. That way they would still have some left. I left the door and found myself back in the hallway. Which room should I go into? I want to go into 4, because we haven't checked this one. The room seemed to be empty except for a lonely light bulb hanging from the ceiling. It didn't seem to be working properly, as it barely gave off any light and flickered every now and then. It took my eyes a while to get adjusted to the darkness. And right as I did, I realized that the room wasn't actually as empty as I had thought. A huge dog that I hadn't seen right away because of the poor lighting was just a few feet in front of me, and it was determined to rip me into pieces. I hastily stumbled backwards, almost tripping. This was it, I thought. I was going to get mauled. But nothing happened. All I could hear was a rattling of a chain. Rattling of a chain. I slowly opened my eyes and saw that the dog was fortunately chained to the wall per its red collar. It was vehemently struggling to get free. After confirming that there was indeed no risk of it getting free, I took a closer look around the room. There were small, glittering objects strewn across the ground next to the animal. Next to the dog was a body, a badly mutilated one. A foul feeling spread throughout my stomach. Did the dog do this? The corpse was lying too close to the dog to examine it. Instead, I cautiously inched closer to the object scattered on the ground next to it. I picked one up and examined it. It was a bullet. I had no use for the bullet yet, but if I did in the future, I'd know where to find one. Why wouldn't you just pick it up? When I took another close look at the area behind the dog, I saw that there was an opening in the wall. It seemed to lead into another section of the ship. This was the first time since getting trapped here that I had seen a possible escape route. The only problem was a furious animal blocking it. I couldn't think of a way to get around the dog without getting mauled, and so I decided to retreat for now and look for a way to get past it without getting myself in danger. Suddenly, I felt the floor beneath me vibrate with increasing intensity. What was happening? An earthquake? We're in the sea. This is like a tsunami, right? The intensity of the rumbling increased, and soon I was thrown from side to side. I struggled to stabilize myself, but ultimately failed. My back hit the wall hard, and I fell to the ground. I rolled into a ball, trying to protect my head as I slid along the floor. The sound of metal breaking apart filled my ears. It was deafening. And then it stopped, just as suddenly as it had started. I stayed in a fetal position for a while longer, fearing that everything would start shaking again. But it seemed like it was finally over. Were the people inside the rooms alright? Had we perhaps run ashore? Would someone come and rescue us, now that we were on land? A myriad of questions filled my mind. My eyes filled on the locked door to the hallway. My eyes fell on the locked door to the hallway. Something about it was off. It was barely noticeable, but it seemed like the door was slightly skewed. I quickly approached it, turned the doorknob and pulled on it. It was still stuck, but I did feel like I would be able to pry it open with more force. And so I tugged again and again, each time the door itching more and more open until the door flew open and I was thrown back. A strong gust of wind hit my face. I reflexively closed my eyes. I celebrated internally. Finally, I would be able to get out of here and look for help. Finally, this nightmare would end, but I was mistaken. What I expected to see beyond the door was a hall and a restaurant from the day before, but my expectations were utterly betrayed. The ocean, a huge body of water, was in the distance. As I looked down, I saw that there were hundreds of meters above ground. And look at the door. The door, just like a hand. How? How were we moving on land? What shocked me the most was that I could make out thin, long legs supporting the ship. Oh no. Their movements were so smooth that it felt like we were floating. It was as if I was inside something that was alive. My eyes wandered across the rest of the ship below me. It must have been broken in half. The form of the tear was quite odd, though. It looked like a huge bite mark, as if something even bigger than this cruise ship had ripped into it. That couldn't be true. There was no animal big enough that could have bitten off such a huge chunk of the ship. As the creature I was on made a sharp turn, the ocean drifted out of view. My grip on the doorframe tightened. I feared I would get thrown off. Then it stopped. My eyes widened in shock as I saw the scene before me. The view was surreal. Oh, is that the cruise we're technically on? These creatures? Oh, that is creepy. One single town was standing in the middle of a wasteland. Wandering through that wasteland were enormous, outlandish creatures amongst gigantic mushrooms. They looked like something straight out of a nightmare. I wiped my eyes, trying to dispel the illusion before me, but it wouldn't go away. My breathing became ragged, and my chest contracted painfully. I had to accept this as my reality. In a trance, I stepped away from the doorframe. A wave of rage overcame me as I lashed out and kicked the wall. A dull pain spread throughout my foot, but I barely noticed it. Tears started to well up in my eyes. Was there even any reason for me to go on? Why shouldn't I just go back to my room, lie down in bed and stay there? I leaned against the wall and stared at the ceiling. My feet were shaking. But I was finally starting to calm down. We still got the kids to save, and the people that need food. I knew that getting angry wouldn't help. What I was seeing wasn't logical in any way. It went against everything I knew. I was a scientist, so not being able to understand this place frustrated me. Above all, it scared me. But giving up wasn't the right thing to do. It wasn't the logical choice if I really wanted this nightmare to end. I'd escape sooner or later and get myself into a better position eventually. That's what I hoped, at least. This ship may still be suspended high above ground, but there must be some way to get down. I would figure out what to do next once I was out of here. I closed the door and slowly left my eyes drift over the four doors in front of me. Which room should I go into? Okay. I think the guy... Okay, yeah. The people here, the 15 people, 40 plus, the kids, and the dog. Let's get the gun, shoot the dog, and see what's behind it. The first thing I did entering the room was taking a quick glance around to see if Frederick was nearby. To my detriment, he was. He jumped up as he saw me come in. Hey, did you bring anything useful with you? He didn't even offer so much as a greeting. I do have food on me. Maybe I could trade it for the weapon. Should I trade the food with Frederick? Okay, let's save, just in case. We have a lot of variety in this story. I decided to give the food to Frederick. It was probably a good idea to have a weapon with me in case I run into something out there. I have some food with me. I can give it to you and you can share it with others. Frederick took a look around, as if to make sure that no one was watching. Then he took the gun from his pocket. Here, take it quickly. Don't tell anyone you gave me this, okay? With a laser, too? I was definitely not okay with keeping the food a secret and was about to protest, but he had already taken the food and shoved me out of the door into the hallway. He threw the gun at my feet and slammed the door shut. What a jerk, I thought. Well, at least I had the gun now. I've never really used one before, but I've seen my fair share of crime movies, so I was certain that it would work out somehow. How hard could shooting a gun be, right? I checked the magazine to see how many bullets were in it. It was empty. Of course it was empty. That's why he handed it over so easily. Otherwise, he would have threatened me with it instead of trading it in. How could I have been fooled this easily? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Frustrated, I put it away and turned towards the other doors. Okay, let's go. I want to check on the kids, actually. Check on the kids. I was worried about those too. All kinds of terrible scenarios had popped into my head. I glanced around the room. They fortunately seems to still be more or less okay. I approached them. I'd given Lenny some medicine, so he should be doing a little better. How was your brother feeling? Amy did seem to be much more calmer than last time. His head doesn't feel as hot anymore. He has been sleeping for a long time, though. For a second, I considered the worst, but his pulse was fortunately still there. He did seem to be in a better state, and I was hopeful that he would get up soon with enough rest. How about you, Amy? Are you holding up all right? Yeah, I think so. I should get going. I'll come back soon to check on you and Lanny again. Okay. I hope you won't be away for so long again. Long? I hadn't been out for that long, but it was understandable that she didn't want to be left all alone. She was likely exaggerating. Oh no. What if time is different in each room? I walked by the canned food and considered taking some with me. No, what? Take none. I decided against taking any. I left the door and found myself back in the hallway. I'm sorry for the people in the first room. Let's check it out. I entered the room for a second time. Even though I hadn't been away for that long, everything seemed different. The faces of the people here had darkened considerably. I spotted the old man that I had talked to not long ago and approached him, but he didn't even look up as I greeted him. He just sat there with a blank expression on his face, not even moving an inch. Hey, is everything okay? No response. As I looked around, I noticed that none of the others had moved from their spots, nor had any of them looked up since I had entered this room. I tried to talk to them, but they wouldn't respond. It was as if they had suddenly turned into statues. Their eyes were devoid of any signs of life. I tried shaking them awake. They didn't even react. Hello? Can anyone hear me? I cried out in the room in desperation, but my words echoed back emptily. What was going on? What had happened to them? Even though I was surrounded by people, I felt alone. I jerked my head around. I scanned the dim room with my eyes, until I finally saw something in one of the corners move ever so slightly. My heart started to race as I stepped closer. I couldn't quite make out what had made the sound, but it was probably a human, right? Grrr. It made a gurgling sound, and I hesitated for a bit. We probably should have gone for the bullet. Horrific images of all kinds of creatures popped into my mind. I shook my head and tried to get them out of my mind. After a few more cautious steps, I was finally close enough to see it. It was a girl. No, it wasn't just some girl. It was the same girl that I had ran into on the deck. Oh. Her body was limp, but as opposed to the other people in this room, she seemed more or less conscious. I cautiously picked her up and made my way towards the door. The words of the old man echoed in my ears. He told me that she was able to pass through the door just like I was. But why hadn't she left the room by herself? Did something happen that she got caught up in? And how did she get in here anyway? I would have noticed her in the hallway. I turned towards my room, and it had a bed and she would probably be safe there. Opening a door while carrying a person was not easy feat, but I finally succeeded and put her on the bed. Uh, home. Her facial expression changed from one of pain to one of relaxation. She instantly fell asleep. I debated whether I should wake her up and try to get some information out of her, but it didn't seem like she was in any condition to answer questions. Seeing her sleep so soundly made me want to take a break as well, but I pushed myself to step out of the room and back into the hallway. I still needed to see if there was any way to get out of here. Okay, no, it's just a dog. As I entered the room, the dog instantly started barking and tugging on its chain. The hole in the wall behind it still seemed to be the only way out of this part of the ship. Once again, I went through my options to see what I could do to get past it. I had a gun, and there were bullets next to the dog. Attack the dog using the gun? Yes. I quickly snatched up some of the bullets that were lying near the dog and loaded the gun. Oh, bullets. I thought bullet. So there's multiple. It felt rather heavy in my hands as I pointed it at the creature. The dog had stopped barking and was glaring at me with mad eyes. He knows. It was as if it knew what the object in my hand was for. My breath was getting heavier. My heartbeat accelerated. My finger twitched, and sudden silence engulfed me. It was soon replaced with a high-pitched sound. I had instinctively closed my eyes. I slowly opened them. A red puddle started tainting the area around the dog's corpse. I looked at the gun in my hands, and a wave of disgust engulfed me. I forcibly threw it into a corner of the room? What? Immediately, I'd started regretting what I had done to the animal. I mean, it was bad dog. He's chained up for a reason, and he has a corpse right in front of him that he mauled. Cautiously, I stepped closer and watched it. I wanted to confirm whether it was really dead. His body lay on the ground, motionless. It was truly dead, without a doubt. I stepped over it and walked towards the hole in the wall. What I had done weighed heavily on my conscience. I stared into the hole. The hole stared back. Hey, yo? Before I let the others know, I had to make sure that whatever was on the other side was safe. The hole was rather small, and I had trouble fitting through, but I succeeded eventually. After a while, I noticed that something was off. The hole seemed to go on for longer than I should. I expected to have already come out in another part of the ship, but it just went on and on. Then a sudden wave of fatigue came over me. It was as if I had stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my arm. It was as if something had stabbed me. I tried to turn around, but I had already become too weak. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. Before I could find out who it was, my consciousness faded. This startled me and I almost slammed the door back shut. How did I not hear this commotion out in the hallway? People were screaming, punching, kicking, and pulling each other's hair. Others were smashing other people's heads against the walls. Everyone was doing their best to kill and not be killed. It was a horrible scene. As I stood there, dumbfounded, I quickly realized what this was all about. People were fighting over food. Instead of sharing it, they decided to fight each other for it. Soon I couldn't differentiate dead from alive. As everyone was covered in blood, I watched in horror. Suddenly, a brawling pair came dangerously close to me. I tried to dodge, but my back hit the door frame and I was pushed out the door as they slammed against me. I didn't think they even saw me, as they were too immersed in their fight. It seemed like the food shortage had driven them to insanity. The door slammed shut, and I was left alone in the once again quiet hallway. Hesitantly, I debated whether or not I should go back into the room and try to break up the fight. I froze the moment I entered the room. I had seen some movement out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned my head, all I could see was a blank wall. As I stepped further in, I noticed a scratching sound. It was as if something was clawing at the wall, but I couldn't make out anything that could have been causing it. There was barely any movement at all. Everyone seemed to still be frozen in place. I stood in the doorframe and strained my ears. It was getting louder. I considered leaving, but curiosity overcame me. Slowly, I stepped into the room. It was then that I saw someone who seemed to still be awake. Their slight twitching was barely noticeable in the dim light. I considered calling out to them, but something told me not to, and so I cautiously inched towards them. But the closer I got, the more apparent it became that something was off. I froze. Their head. Oh my, it's melting. Yeah, he has nice hair though. It almost looked as if their face was melting off their bones. Their eyes were dark and hollow. I took a few hasty steps back, but they fortunately didn't seem to react to my presence at all. The scratching seemed to have gotten even louder. I noticed something lying on the floor not too far away from the person I had just checked on. I hesitated, but my fearful glances were answered with complete silence and lack of any movement. I was still safe. Probably. I shifted towards the thing on the ground and slowly picked it up. It was a sheet of paper that looked like it was ripped from a diary or a log. If I was the leader of this operation, I'd fire anyone who let the ethics get in the way. Sacrifices always need to be made to ensure humanity's future. I guess it doesn't really matter. I'll just continue my research in private, since it's not like there aren't enough subjects inside the zone. I couldn't make heads or tails of this note. It was missing too much context. Scratching got even louder. Something was definitely not right here. I should probably get out of here. I let my eyes wander over the room one last time and made my way back outside. I grabbed the door handle but then remembered what I had experienced last time I was in this room. Was it really a good idea to go back in? Though technically, my life hadn't been in any danger. Maybe I should check the room again just in case. I'd just stay in the doorframe. It wasn't like anything besides me could leave the room anyway. Yo, it changed bad. It's white. It's cleaner somehow. The door slowly creaked open and I glanced inside the room. The people that were here were gone. The room was completely empty. In their face, in the place, was a black substance. Was that blood? Then the scratching started. It seemed to be coming from every direction at once. As I tried to make out its source, I noticed something at the very far end of the room. There were ripples on the wall. It almost looked like the wall was made out of water. Slowly, something started to push itself through the thick, liquid-like texture. First, it was a single hand. Then more and more arms started to appear. All of them grasped at empty air. All the while, the scratching was getting louder and louder. I tried to shield my ears with my hands. What is that? My instincts told me to run, but I was frozen in place. I couldn't avert my eyes from the scene before me. Slowly, feet started to reach through the walls, And then finally, their whole body was free. The scratching had stopped. I recognized the clothes of some of the creatures in front of me. These were the people who had been trapped in this room. But their heads, they weren't human anymore. Their faces were distorted beyond recognition. As I stared at them in disbelief, I noticed that none of them were moving. They were just staring at me. Then one of them slowly lifted their arm, grasping at the air, and started to slowly walk towards me. It almost looked as if it was pleading. Then the others followed suit. I started to feel a mixture of terror and pity, but as they got closer and closer, my terror grew stronger and stronger. What would they do once they reached me? They definitely weren't human anymore. Were they about to attack me? My head began to spin, and I took a few hasty step backs, almost tripping on my way out of that room. There was nothing I could do for them. It was too late. If only I could have found a way out before they turned into that. Frustrated, and with a heavy heart, I slammed the door shut. Which room should I go into? I felt uneasy about entering this room, but I had to find out what had happened to everyone in here. With a foul feeling on my stomach, I stepped over the threshold. What I saw was way worse than anything I could have imagined. The stench was overwhelming. 40 lifeless, blood-covered bodies were lying on the floor. Somehow, they had already started decomposing, even though I hadn't been gone for that long. The smell was enough to make me want to vomit, and I knew that if I stayed here any longer, I would. But I had to see if there were any survivors. I slowly made my way to the middle of the room to get a better look at the situation. But then the worst happened. I stepped on something soft and wet. My foot sunk in and my sock was soaked. My body froze. Slowly my eyes wandered to the ground. My foot was stuck in the torso of one of the dead bodies. Almost in a panic, I turned around and stumbled out of the door. When I got back out in the hallway, I gasped for air and did my best to suppress my gagging and tears. It took me a while to get myself back together. I couldn't believe that I had seen in that room. It all felt like a nightmare. But I knew that I had to move on. Okay, now instead of giving the medicine to Lenny, I'm gonna see what happens if I don't. I didn't know if what I had here was a proper medicine, so I decided not to risk it. Seemed to have some food and water here. Do you think I could take some of it with me? Okay. We're gonna take half. Amy was still huddled over Lanny's body. I was about to say corpse. He's not dead yet. Her face was twisted with worry. His condition seemed to have worsened, which became more and more apparent as I got closer. Spots on his arms and limbs seemed to be bruised. Some kind of black ulcers, similar to buds, grew out of some of them. Ah, I was sure he wouldn't last. I was sure he wouldn't last much longer without medicine. Amy looked up at me with sad eyes. I had some medicine on me, or at least that's what the woman who gave it to me called it. I couldn't really read the label. Now, this looks messed up, but we need to find out what happens to him if we don't do it. I didn't know what sense what is not. I didn't know if what I had. Okay, that's the same thing. I should get going again. I'll come back soon to check on you. Okay, please don't take so long this time. Yeah, that's the same. Take none. No, we're not doing that. I quickly made my way towards the middle of the room to find out whether the boy's condition had improved. I could already tell from a distance that even more wounds had opened up. On top of that, it was as if some mushroom-like plants were sprouting out of them. Amy didn't look well either. She was just sitting there next to him, staring into space. Oh my god. The light in her eyes is gone. It was as if she hadn't been noticed me coming in. Amy, are you alright? Her head barely moved in my direction. Scott. It was almost as if she didn't really recognize me. I grew concerned. Yeah, it's me, Scott. Are you alright? She didn't reply. Maybe she was just tired. I couldn't blame her. This whole situation was pretty exhausting. Especially for someone as young as her. Where have you been? Her voice was almost inaudible. I was searching for a way out of here, don't worry. I'm sure I'll find one soon. She continued to stare at the floor with a blank expression. I just need some more time. I'll have you and your brother out of here soon. She turned away. It didn't seem like she was up for a conversation. It's probably in her interest that I left and continued searching for an exit. I let her be. I walked by the canned food and considered taking some with me. Take none. I left the room and found myself back in the hallway. Oh no, the door wouldn't budge at first. How did it get stuck? It was totally fine the last time I tried to enter it. I started pulling on it with all my might. Eventually, I was able to pry it open. What had blocked my attempt to enter the room were vines and mushrooms growing on the ground. Where had they come from? My question was quickly answered as I pushed through them. Lanny's body seemed to be floating in the middle of the room, but I quickly realized that it was just being supported by some of the veins. It looked like they had sprouted out of him. How was this possible? Where was Amy? I couldn't see her anywhere. Amy, are you in there? Are you alright? No reply. She had to be. There was no way she could. My eyes darted around in a panic until I finally spotted her. It was Amy, but my heart sank into my stomach. There had been no way to escape the expanse of the vines, and she must have been entangled in them. And then, something wet slid down my cheek, but I barely noticed it. I hadn't known them for that long, but I still felt responsible. I was their chance to escape this hell, but I had let them down. Shaking my head in disbelief, I stumbled backwards out of the room. The door fell shut in front of me. The horrible scene had burned itself into my mind. I was on the verge of losing hope, but I steadied myself and turned away from the door. Even if I wasn't able to save Amy and Lenny anymore, I might be able to help other people trapped in here. I shouldn't give up just yet. I had to postpone mourning their death until later. With a heavy heart, I went back to the middle of the hallway. God, let's not trade with this guy. Considering how rude Frederick had been to me so far, I didn't really feel like giving him any food. Screw you. Though, I did feel bad for the others. But the people in their rooms might need it more, so I decided to keep it to myself for now. I don't have anything with me, sorry. Still, how incompetent can you be? Don't come back until you've found something. He shouted at me yet again and shoved me out of the room. Did he actually think that I'd want to give him any food after all of this? But there were other innocent people in the room who were in need of help, and I really wanted to help them. I expected Frederick to jump towards me and demand to know whether or not I had any food with me, but to my surprise, he didn't. He was nowhere to be seen. Instead, another man, as if awoken from a trance, jumped up and stormed towards me. I tried to step out of the way, but he almost tackled me and grabbed me by my collar. You have food and water? You give them to us. I struggled to get him off me, but he kept clinging on to me. His strength was surprising, considering how frail he looked. Let me go. Give it to me. I bet you're just keeping it all to yourself. As I struggled with him, I punched. A pungent metallic stench hit my nose. I finally managed to throw him off me. His body hit the ground. He laid there for a bit, gasping in frustration. Then he crawled back to where he had been sitting before attacking me. While catching my breath, I took a look around the room. Everyone was sitting in their own corner, eyes fixed on the ground. They looked more famished than the last time I had seen them. and the whereabouts of Frederick were also still a mystery to me. I approached the woman sitting in one of the far back corners of the room, but she averted her gaze as I asked her if she had seen where he had gone. He's not here anymore. This was all she was willing to tell me. I had no idea what had happened here, and it didn't seem like I'd find out by asking them. Another wave of the pungent smell hit my nose, and I took a few step backs. What was that? It almost made me gag. Not wanting to spend any more time here than necessary, I left the room. Let's go back in. I felt really uneasy about entering this room. Was it because of the way everyone had acted last time that I was here? Or was it because of the smell? With a foul feeling in my stomach, I stepped over the threshold. An even worse stench than last time hit my face, stealing my breath and making my eyes tear up. It was enough to make me vomit, and I knew that if I stayed here any longer I would. No way. Please tell me she's not. I took a look around the room and through my teary eyes. There were piles of something. While quickly covering my nose, I wiped at my watering eyes and took a closer look. There were big mountains of clothes scattered throughout the room. Some kind of insects were buzzing around them. But there was also another big red pile. At first, I thought it was flesh, but as I got closer, I realized that it was mostly organs. I quickly stepped back towards a wall, but as I did, I almost stumbled over something. I let out a shout as I tried to regain my balance. I glanced at the floor to see what I had stepped on. It was a woman who was leaning on the wall, but her appearance was off. Her stomach was horribly bloated, okay, as if it was about to burst at any moment. Right next to her was a knife that was covered in blood. It didn't seem like she was killed with it, as I didn't see any stab wounds on her. Instead, she was covered in many small bruises. Either way, she was undoubtedly dead, even if I couldn't quite make out why. This whole room was bizarre. Piles of clothes and piles of organs, and a woman with a bloated stomach. What had happened here? I quickly came to the conclusion there was no use thinking about it, and I wanted to get out of here as soon as possible. The stench was killing me. I gasped for air as I finally stepped out of the room, trying to force a horrible image of what I had seen out of my mind. I decided not to enter the room again. I turned towards the other doors and, with a heavy heart, contemplated what to do next. Now, we have to be the worst human to ever exist. I'm so sorry, Amy and Lanny, but I must take all your food. I decided to take all of it with me. It'd be fine for a bit without it, and this would give some trading leverage. But I couldn't help feeling terrible, even if my decision seemed logical to me. I left the room and found myself back in the hallway. My heart began to race. I started to assume the worst. I walked towards the middle of the room where his brother was lying. My eyes were still adjusting to the weak lighting. And there she was, lying next to him. They both looked famished, as if they hadn't eaten in at least a week. How could this be? I wasn't gone for that long. Something was to happen while I wasn't here. I shouldn't have left them alone. Then all of this wouldn't have. I could have stopped whatever did this to them, but I was too late. I approached them and checked both of their pulses. Nothing. I staggered backwards. There was nothing I could do for them anymore. With a heavy heart, I stumbled out of the room. Jeez. Right. Now we got the final door. I think this is like the outro. I'm pretty sure the first door we did, like on the first video, was the intro, and this is like the outro. So this should be it. Last door. How many times does this make now? Never thought his presence would make such a huge difference. Seems like his use is nearing its end. No need to keep him around. And I wonder how long it'll take until I find another one. Letting it end like this would be quite boring though. And he did interact with her quite a lot. Maybe I should do one last experiment. I'll send him off with a bang. He deserves it for helping me so much. Alright, time to go make preparations. What? What was? My head felt like it was splitting open. What was I doing? I had seen something, a nightmare. No, it had been real, hadn't it? The pain was nearly unbearable. Images that seemed to have no relation to each other flashed through my mind. A plant, a dark room full of people, distorted faces, an ocean, children, a blood trail, a pack of cats, a knife, pain. My head felt as if it was about to burst, and then it was over. The pain was gone. I steadied myself. The images I had seen, were they hallucinations? Or were they memories? My mind was all jumbled up. I called out as I left the bedroom, but no one answered. I approached the front door, my hand touched the cold doorknob. Sweat started to form on my arm. Was I afraid? Of what? I swallowed hard. My hand finally moved and I turned the doorknob. As I stepped outside, I noticed that everything looked normal. My breathing slowed. I hadn't noticed how tense my body had become. I stepped into a narrow alleyway that seemed to be leading into a busier part of the town. It was bustling with life. Something about the people walking by was off, but it was hard to put a finger on it. I was too far away. I decided to avoid the main street for now, and instead went the other direction. My instincts told me that this was the right thing to do. Right as I turned into another alleyway, I saw something from the corner of my eyes. Had someone just entered one of the buildings? I hadn't turned my head back quick enough. This brilliantly white structure seemed out of place amidst the gray houses that were lining the street. As I trotted closer, I noticed that it looked awfully familiar to the lab I had worked in. No, it was the lab. What was it doing here? I stood in front of it for a while, dumbfounded. But there was no mistaking it. This was my lab. The easiest way to make sure was entering it. The interior looked exactly like I remembered it. No one was at the reception, meaning no one to manually open the door. But I fortunately still knew the passcode. I made my way upstairs and walked towards the section M. On the way, I tried to keep my eyes and ears peeled in case one of my colleagues was around, but the place seemed to be totally deserted. I wasn't the only thing that was bothering me, though. Everything was oddly clean. Most people would likely not think that this was something to be concerned about. The problem was, there was no way someone had been able to find the time to tidy up the lab. Not only had we lost a big part of our staff, no one was in the right mood to bother with keeping things clean. As I was contemplating what this might mean, I finally reached my destination, my office. The door was slightly ajar. Did someone break in? I cautiously opened it. The room was empty. My desk was on. My file cabinets were gone. Even the wallpaper was gone. What had happened here? The only thing present was a single sheet of paper in the middle of the room. I hesitantly walked towards it. The door behind me suddenly slammed shut and I jerked around. Was it the wind? Or did someone slam it shut? But there was no door. I stood there in disbelief. Then I slowly turned around and I looked back at the sheet of paper on the ground. My hands began to shake. The closer I got to the piece of paper, the worse the trembling became. I hesitantly let my eyes wander over the red writing. Thank you for participating in my experiments. Oh? Well, that was it for Mycorrhiza. It's very depressing. The characters, their fates are just very gnarly and gory. It's always Amy and Lenny, man. They do not have a good life in this place. On the first chapter, on pets, Amy's arms got twisted backwards, and Lanny got eaten by a mutant dog. In the faces, they literally get their faces changed. Amy turns into like a tree, and Lanny gets his face taken by Frederick, Texas Chainsaw style. And in the hands, they literally just die. But I really liked how unique each level got. With the pets, it was the plants turning people, literally twisting them. And in the faces was like going town, obsessed with beauty, quotation marks, beauty. And hands, where it's like a pretty weird ass cruise ship that we're on. We're literally on the back of those like little, like, I don't know what little, they're huge. I don't know what type of creature those are, but they're like, but they just walk around the wasteland with people on them. To be honest, I don't really care about for us, like our deaths. It was more of the people that we met, like Amy and Lanny. Those two were the actual only normal beings in each chapter. It was just not meant to be for people like us. Normal people do not have it easy in these worlds. But hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.